the epic verse of Homer. It wasn't the only poetic game in town in the ancient Greek era. In the 7th century BCE, we have a figure named Archilochos, who going that far back, we don't know that much about him, of course. His work survives only in fragments, but he offers something distinct and very different from Homer. Well, for one thing, he's writing in the lyric mode, much shorter poems, and the character of them is quite distinct. They are rejecting the heroic mode of the epic. They produce more of an individualized character of the poet. You can comb through the Iliad and the Odyssey, countless times and come up with very little sense of who Homer was or what if he was even a single person. That's not really the case with Archilochos. You can go through his stuff and you see, all right, there's a personality there. There's an individual there. It has specific characteristics of character that make his voice rather engaging, even while he is, in some cases, being a bit of a scoundrel. Sometimes he can be rather offensive, but the vibrancy of his work is frankly undeniable. One of the more frequently cited works of his we have just in a little couplet, which is The Fox and the Hedgehog. The fox knows lots of tricks, the hedgehog only one, but it's a winner, which is an interesting little wink of a poem. It suggests that, well, okay, the majesty or the omnipotence of the former doesn't necessarily trump the cleverness of the latter. The fox might be all powerful, but the hedgehog has a trump card up his sleeve, let's say. The saying itself has been cited many times in the modern era, perhaps most famously an essay by Isaiah Berlin, a very fine little essay. But the notion of it is significant. You get a sense of an underdog here. You get a sense of somebody who is clever rather than brilliant. But knows the game, knows how to work his way around, and is somewhat anti-heroic. You can see some of that in his work Elegies, where he talks about himself in a rather distinctive way. I am a servant of the Lord God of war, and one versed in the Muses' lovely gifts. On my spears my daily bread, on my spear my wine from Ismaros, and drinking it, it's on my spear I recline. There won't be many bows drawn, nor much slingshot when on the plain the war god brings the fight together. It will be an agony of swords. That is the warfare that the doughty barons of Euboea are expert at. But come now, take the cup and pass along the clippers' benches, open up the casks and draw the red wine off the lees. We, too, shall need some drink to get us through this watch. Some Scion sports my splendid shield. I had to leave it in a wood, but saved my skin. Well, I don't care. I'll get another just as good. A lot going on here. A lot of information coming out. First of all, I am a servant of the Lord God of war, and one versed in the Muses' lovely gifts. Significantly, that's a breach of the Homeric model. In Homer, all of the poets, if you think back to, again, we don't know really much about Homer, but if you think back to all of the poets that pop up in the Iliad and the Odyssey, they are separate from the fighting class. They are separate. They are very distinct. They're very respected, but they are not necessarily warriors. So when Archilochos, is blending those two jobs, when he is bringing those two together, that gives him a bit of a distinct perspective. First of all, the gods or the poets in the Homeric world are all entertaining the aristocrats. That's their job. They're entertainers, essentially. He is saying, "Well, no, I'm out there fighting for my bread and butter." Literally, or for my bread and my wine, and the poetry is not necessarily contingent upon that. So it gives the sense that the poetry might be in some ways more personal, more authentic, less likely to sing the praises of the monarch or of the ruling class and hierarchy of society. Here you're getting a voice that is perhaps from a lower class background, or at least of a lower class perspective. Somebody with a bit of a skepticism about hierarchy in general. But the common touch of it comes through, the concern with bread and wine, and he likes to lean back on his spear and recline. He just wants to kick back, have a few drinks. And when he talks about the war, that itself is also very distinctive. There won't be many bows drawn, nor much slingshot when on the plain the war god brings the fight together. Well, the bow and arrow and the slingshot are weapons you use from a distance. He's saying, no, it's all going to be the agony of swords. There's a phrase for you. The agony of swords, which is close combat, bloody, vicious, in your face fighting that is the humanity at its most brutal. And he takes a shot again at the upper classes, perhaps. That is the warfare that the doughty barons of Euboea are expert at. The doughty barons, perhaps the aristocrats, they're fine with sending people out to do that kind of fighting, but they're not leaving their comfortable home for it. And he seems okay with that. The poetic voice here, Archilochos, is saying, well, yeah, sure, this is our lot. But he's not afraid to throw a few elbows here and there. He'll gripe about it, but there's no indication that he's not doing his job. He just does what he has to do that job. And that includes what apparently is a fair amount of drinking. He references it a couple of times in this poem. But come now, take the cup and pass along the clippers' benches. Pass it along, which is a sign of sociability. It's a sign of comradeship. It's a sign of, well, sure, alcohol, but conviviality and togetherness. He is one of the men, one with the men, and he's not sitting back with the hoi polloi, hanging out with the generals, quite frankly. And you can see that also when he says, we too shall need some drink to get us through this watch. We too. Well, who is the other for the two? Not just the generals. The generals are going to lean back and have a glass of wine and listen to their own poet and have a relaxing evening before the fighting tomorrow. We too, however, we common soldiers who go out and do the grunt work, we too deserve a little wine at the end of the day, and we're just going to take it to get us through this watch, which suggests, okay, well, maybe they're a little fearful, maybe they're leaning on the alcohol to get them through. Perhaps it's a terror thing. More likely, I would say, it's just like they just can't sit up like another night doing a watch, which is what ordinary soldiers have to do, and it's god awful boring. So having a little wine, that'd be nice. A little bit of a break, and the admission at the end, saying, "Some say on sports my splendid shield. I had to leave it in a wood." He was fighting, and okay, I got to get out of there. Um, but I saved my skin. He dropped his sword, which is a very priceless item and highly prized. Just think about how in the Iliad the armor is always fought over. Here, the sword, you said, I tossed it, but I had to run and I got away. So, that worked for me. There's no sentimentalism about the sword. There's no, there's no worship of it. Again, think of the bit in the Iliad and also the Aeneid later on of the worshiping of the sword of Achilles. He's much more pragmatic about that. Nope, I don't care. I got away, and that's all that matters. I'll get another just as good. Not materialistic at all. Doesn't really care. Says, okay, yeah, I'm happy. What matters is I got away. I lived. So you're getting a sense of this character. You're getting a sense of somebody who's much more pragmatic, much more on the ground, much more of the people than the Homeric model. There is, however, with that, an earthiness to him that is appealing and sometimes a little distasteful. The poem "Encounter in a Meadow" suggests some brutish behavior that perhaps comes with the territory of being such a man of the people. It's a little bit more fragmented. There are a few more ellipses in this one, so it's a little bit harder to get at the beginning, especially. But the import of it, the significance of the poem, comes through. No, my dear friend, I'm overcome by crippling desire and holding entirely off. If you can't wait and your desire is urgent, there's someone else at our house now longing for a man, a lovely slender girl. There's nothing wrong, if I'm any judge, with her looks. Why don't you make friends with her? That's what she said. And here's how I replied. Daughter of Imphimedo, that lady fine and true, whom now the moldy earth has taken in, the love goddess offers young men a range of joys besides the sacrament, and one of them will serve. We'll talk of all this, you and I, at leisure when grows dark, and may God be our aid. I'll do it just as you say. But please, my dear, don't grudge it if I go under an arch through the gates. I'll dock at the grass borders. Be sure of that. Now, as for Neobule, someone else have her. Dear me, she's past ripe, twice your age. Her girlhood's flower has shed its petals, lost all the enchantment it had. She never got enough. She's proved her measure, crazy woman. Keep her away, for the crows. I pray no friend of mine would have me marry someone like her and give all the neighbors a laugh. No, you're the one that I want. You're not untrustworthy. You're not two-faced. But she's so precipitate, she makes friends with crowds of men. I don't want babies blind and premature like the proverbial bitch from showing too much haste. That's what I said. And then I took the girl, and laying her down in the flowers with my soft textured cloak, I covered her. My arm cradled her neck, while she, in her fear, like a fawn, gave up the attempt to run. Gently I touched her breast, where the young flesh peeped from the edge of her dress, her ripeness newly come. And then, caressing all her lovely form, I shot my hot energy off, just brushing golden hairs. Yeah. He's narrating a rape. And it's troubling. You can recognize in it a certain value of human sexuality. You can recognize it in a certain earthiness. Again, a real attitude that is not so idealized. Certainly, there's a lot of raping going on in Homer, but it's all off stage, so to speak. This is troubling. this is the bad boy character on the senior end of that. Everybody can sort of snicker a little at, well, he's snarky towards the aristocrats, or hey, he just likes to drink every now and then. But there is that other thing. Now, it would be um, inaccurate, let's say, to abjure the one aspect and only celebrate the more acceptable ones. But that would be a crime against the art, quite frankly. Because when we have so few scraps, and these are literally scraps, but when we have so few scraps of evidence from that far back, from that wellspring of culture, we can't be that modest. We can't be that pious. We we need to accept humanity in its full. Now, would this guy get published today with some of that stuff? Probably not, or maybe. Who knows? But the experience of seeing it as part of a mosaic, patchy as it is, uh, that outweighs other considerations that might be a little bit more offensive or indelicate. So we take it, we appreciate it for what it is, and we try and fit it into context of an age that is already all too shadowy.